Ambassador Kethalara's mandibles clicked in barely concealed amusement as she reviewed the Galactic Council's latest crisis report. The Zephyrian plague had devastated agricultural worlds across 3 star systems, leaving nearly 40 billion sentients facing starvation within the next standard cycle. Emergency food shipments from reserve worlds could barely sustain 10% of the affected population. The humans have offered assistance, announced Council Prime Vexitorin, his crystalline voice resonating through the chamber. A wave of chittering and harmonic laughter rippled through the assembled delegates. The Altarian representatives' gas bladders inflated with mirth, while the insectoid Crix delegation buzzed their wings in what passed for chuckling among their species. The humans? Kethalara's translator struggled with her incredulous tone. The primitive mudball species that only achieved faster-than-light travel 2 decades ago. What could they possibly offer? She accessed her species' agricultural database with a thought. Earth's farming statistics appeared in her mind. A single world, barely 7 billion inhabitants, using archaic soil-based cultivation methods that the galaxy had abandoned millennia ago. Their yield per hectare was laughably inefficient compared to the consortium's hydroponic orbital farms or the Nexus Coalition's mineral synthesis facilities. They claim they can provide sufficient food supplies for all affected systems within 1 standard month, Vexitorin continued, his tone suggesting he found the proposition equally absurd. The chamber erupted in outright laughter. The hegemony's military advisor, General Thainrix, slammed his armored appendage against his console. Let them try. When they inevitably fail, we'll have justification to strip them of their provisional membership and claim their system's resources. 3 weeks later, Kethalara stood in the cargo bay of her flagship, staring in stunned silence at the impossible sight before her. Kilometer-long human vessels were arriving every few hours, each one disgorging millions of tons of foodstuffs. Grain, proteins, vegetables, fruits, varieties she'd never seen before in quantities that defied every agricultural model in the galactic database. Ambassador, her aide whispered, the calculations don't make sense. Earth's total arable land couldn't possibly produce even a fraction of what we're seeing. Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Harvest Dawn approached them, her weathered hands still bearing traces of soil, despite the ship's decontamination systems. Impressive, isn't it? Though this is just the beginning. Kethalara's translator crackled as it processed her bewilderment. How? Your world's agricultural capacity. You looked at the wrong metrics, Chen interrupted gently. You counted our farmland, but you didn't count our farmers. The human gestured to a massive display showing Earth from orbit. Where Kethalara had expected to see the primitive patchwork agriculture her databases described, she witnessed something extraordinary. Every available space, rooftops, vertical walls, floating platforms, underground caverns, was green with growing plants. 7 billion humans, Chen continued, but nearly 6 billion of us grow something. My grandmother cultivates tomatoes in her apartment window. My nephew manages a vertical farm in what used to be a skyscraper. We've got floating gardens in our oceans and mushroom farms in abandoned subway tunnels. Kethalara's mandibles clicked involuntarily. But the inefficiency, you mistake diversity for inefficiency. Chen's smile was patient. Your species perfected a few crops, optimized them for maximum yield, and scaled up. Very logical. But what happens when a plague hits those crops? The ambassador fell silent. The Zephyrian plague had targeted the 3 primary grain variants that fed most of the affected systems, genetically similar crops that offered no resistance to the pathogen. Humans have cultivated over 7,000 edible plant varieties, Chen continued. Selective breeding programs dating back 10,000 years. We never forgot that diversity equals survival. Every region, every climate, every possible growing condition, we've got something that thrives there. A new arrival caught Kethalara's attention. A ship designated Prairie Thunder was docking, its cargo bays filled with what appeared to be moving soil. As she watched, thousands of humans disembarked carrying bags of seeds and primitive tools. Where are they going? She asked. Kepler 442b. The plague wiped out their topsoil, but our soil scientists think they can have it producing again within 2 weeks. They're bringing earthworms, bacteria, fungi, an entire ecosystem in bags and bottles. Over the following days, Kethlar observed something that challenged every assumption her species held about agricultural development. Humans didn't just grow food, they grew growing systems. They didn't merely produce, they rehabilitated. Barren worlds became green within days as human farmers shared not just their crops, but their knowledge, their soil, their very approach to nurturing life from dead ground. "Your people are terraformers," she said to Chen during their final meeting. "We prefer gardeners," Chen replied. "Same principle, smaller scale. We've been turning unsuitable land into gardens for millennia, deserts into oases, swamps into rice paddies, mountainsides into terraced fields. It's not about the technology, it's about the patience and the knowledge that comes from never giving up on making things grow." When the crisis officially ended 26 days after the human fleet's arrival, the Galactic News Network struggled to process the implications. 40 billion lives saved by a species the galaxy had dismissed as primitive farmers, emergency food reserves that exceeded the affected system's needs by 300%, and waiting lists of requests from other worlds seeking human agricultural assistance. At the Emergency Council session, General Thaner X sat in sullen silence as the vote was called. Humanity's provisional membership was unanimously converted to full council status, with additional designation as the galaxy's official agricultural response force. As Ambassador Kethlara cast her vote, she reflected on the lesson her species and the entire galaxy had learned. They had laughed at human farmers, dismissing them as backward and inefficient. They had failed to understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their ambition. It was their absolute stubborn refusal to let anything die if they could help it grow instead. The humans had turned the galaxy's greatest crisis into its most abundant harvest, proving that sometimes the most primitive solution is also the most powerful one. When in doubt, plant more seeds.